Happy New Year! It is officially 2026 and I thought I would take a look back at my miniature collecting and painting progress of 2025. In January I came back to the hobby after 19 years away, and I've since then accumulated probably over 500 models. I'm sitting at 6 full 2000 point armies with loads to spare. On top of that, I have a few combat patrols and various diorama projects laying around. All in all, I would estimate it to be around 20,000 points worth of models. Now comes the embarrassing confession that I've only painted 40 to 50 Space Marines, 1 tank and 1 Dreadnought, with most of that being for my Dark Angels. I have the footage for most of that recorded and edited, but I just haven't taken the time to record voiceovers and such. I still have around 20 or so models to paint before the army is complete. My goal is to finish the Dark Angels this month and then move on to my wife's Ultramarines and finish that before the end of February, with my long-term goal being to finish all 6 armies before the end of 2026. So let's go back 8 months and see what I was up to then. They say the first step is admitting that you have a problem, but obviously I don't. Okay, I'm now ready to accept that I do have a problem. But let's stay in that timeline and slowly work our way to the present, starting with the intercessors I painted up just after that. So, here are 5 Primaris intercessors. One of them has his arms and weapon in a sub-assembly. This is so the Imperialis on his chest as well as the backside of the bolt rifle are easier to reach. I've put some putty where the parts are glued together just to help with adhesion. First, I give them a few coats of Caliban green. I've thinned it down quite a bit just so I can slather it on. But after 2 coats it's still a bit patchy, but that doesn't really matter in this case since the next few steps will mitigate that. After the paint has dried, I go over with a generous coat of Nuln Oil, trying to make sure that I don't get any big blobs pooling. Once the Nuln Oil is dried, the whole model is a lot darker, but this is easily fixed with a heavy dry brush of Caliban green all over, followed by a lighter dry brush of Warpstone Glow. And with all of that done, the model is brighter and more accentuated, with the patchiness no longer noticeable. Next up are all the joints, which get a coat of army painted deep grey, trying to be as neat as possible so I don't mess up any of the green. I give the Imperialis and all other bone coloured areas a few coats of Ushab de Bone. The coverage is not that great, so I had to do 4 coats before I was satisfied. With a fine brush and some Caliban green, I go around the Imperialis and clean up any spill, and then coat all the bone coloured areas with some Skeleton Horde. And once that's dried, we have some nice shading on the chest. Next, I start filling in all the other majority colours, starting with Mephiston Red for all the weapon casings, followed by Lead Belcher for all the gunmetal parts, Runelord Brass on the shells, and Rhinox Hide on all the holsters and pouches. I used the molded shoulder pads from the Dark Angels upgrade sprue, so that means I have to paint the chapter symbol,
And since white is the worst color to paint, I had to thin it down a lot before I gave it 4 coats and then a coat of Nuln Oil. I went around the models and filled in various details such as the vents on the backpacks. As neatly as possible I painted all the eye lenses, and at this point all of the base coats and most of the shading was done. Then it was time for the most time-consuming step, edge highlighting. I'm not kidding when I say that this took as long as all of the other steps combined. And since this was the first time I'd tried edge highlighting, my technique wasn't very good, and to be honest, it still isn't. After the rest of the model received a coat of Nuln Oil, this is what we're left with. I then put on some decals, the wrong ones mind you, and gave them a coat of contrast medium to give them a uniform finish. The last step was to put down some texture paste on the bases and paint the base rims. At the time I was quite satisfied with how they turned out. I mean, I still am, but I feel like I've improved significantly since then. Also, I did go back and fix the decals once I had realized. Anyway, this is how they turned out.